Hello everyone. In my last video, I did a brief tutorial on how to quickly set up a Wreckfest server, and I just kind of briefly skimmed over the server config file. So in this video, I'm going to have a tutorial on how to change all of the settings and options in the Wreckfest config file. All right, so the first thing we're going to take a look at is the server name and the welcome message. So these have a certain character limit, and you can see them right here. So for the server name, 63 characters, the welcome message, 254 characters. And I put mine around quotes, you don't need to do that. I just did it to make mine look a little neater. So one of the things a lot of people ask about is how to add colors. And to add colors, you just add like this little caret and the number, or the caret and the colon, and that will end up adding a color. So for this, we can take a look. I've got the caret 6, and that is purple. Kind of shows up pink. So everything to the right of that will be pink. And then I have another one, caret 5. That'll be cyan. So everything to the right of this will show up as cyan. And then for the welcome message, I just have the caret and the colon. So everything to the right will show up as yellow. So all of this will be yellow. For the password, I think the default is Wreckfest. So you can, leave it as this, make it whatever you want, or you can just leave it blank. If you leave it blank, anybody can join it. Max players, I just leave that at 24. The max players on PC is 24, so you can't go above this. For LAN, when you set this to 0, you actually will be, if you have your ports forwarded, you will see the server on the internet, and other people will be able to see the server. And if you put this to 1, only people on your local network will be able to see this. So for ports, I will put all of the ports that you can use right over here. If you don't really know what these are, you can just leave these as default. Should be totally fine. Just make sure you forward these ports. That's in my previous video on how to quickly set up a Wreckfest server. So exclude from Quickplay here. When you put this to 0, it means that people who click the Quickplay button may just randomly join into your server or whatever server is open. And if you put this as a 1, it means people will only join this server if they take a look at the whole server list and they click on this one. Clear users. So for this one, I like to keep this one at a 0. If you do clear the users, basically everybody who has like admin or mod privileges or they're banned, those will all just be erased. But if you keep this at 0, all of those will be kept even after you restart the server. Owner disabled. So for this, I like to keep this as a 1. Why I like to keep this as a 1 is I don't like the first person who joins to have owner privileges. Which basically like they have admin privileges. They have, the ability to do whatever they want on the server. So for admin control, what admin control does is, let's say you have admins in your server, and one of them readies up, that actually automatically starts the countdown. And let's say you don't have that, that's where this ready players required comes in. So again, there's a few different ways this would go. So let's say you have several admins in your server, and this is set to 1. If any of those admins readies up, it'll start the countdown. And let's say you have just one admin and they ready up, that starts the countdown. And let's say you just have one admin and he never readies up. He's AFK, he went to the bathroom, something like that. Everybody in the lobby will have to wait for that one admin to come back for the countdown to start. Otherwise, it won't start. And then let's say there's no admins and it'll just default to the ready players required. So I personally just like to leave this at 0 because I would like, if an admin's AFK, I wouldn't want everybody to have to wait on them. And if you leave this at 0, it just means that a certain percentage of players have to be ready. So next we'll take a look at the cooldown. So your options here, it says here between 30 and 127 seconds. I personally prefer 60. Why I don't like 30 is because when it gets to 25 seconds and lower, you can't, like admins can't change and moderators can't change any settings, and people can't change their cars anymore. They're locked in. So ready players required. 50, that's a good number. You know, half the players in the server. I wouldn't put this at 100 because then if one person's AFK, everyone has to wait on that one person. All right, so next we have our list of admins. So you can see it's commented out. We can just uncomment that. And you can see there's some examples here. We're just going to get rid of that. And let's say you're like, oh, what is this Steam ID 64? Well, real quickly, I'm going to bring up my web browser. And I could show you how to bring up the Steam ID. So for here, I can find out what my Steam ID is. It's right here. It's my profile URL. So my Steam ID is this number right here. It's the Steam ID 64. So one site that we can use to find out what everybody's Steam ID 64 is we can just Google search this, and then I use this, steamid.io. And then you can put their URL in here. So I'm going to copy and paste this whole thing into here. And then we can say, hey, look, here's my Steam ID 64. Now, let's say you have somebody that has an interesting URL. So I'm going to bring up Poopsock because his URL is a custom one. So you can see here his URL does not have his Steam ID 64 in it. It just has Dr. Poopsock. So we can take this and we can bring this over to here, this site, look up, and then right there we have his Steam ID 64. So let's say I want to use his name for a moderator. So I can just take this, copy it, and then go back to the server config file, and I can just paste it in here. All right, now that we have Poopsock's Steam ID 64 in here, let's say we want to add more. All we need to do is put a comma and then just put another Steam ID in there. And you could just keep putting commas and adding Steam IDs to add more admins. The same thing here goes for this one, op Steam IDs. These are going to be your moderators. So you can do the exact same thing here. Just find their Steam ID 64, put it in there, another comma. All right. And you can just comment these out if you don't want any admins or mods. I'm just going to comment them back out. All right, so next up, we're going to take a look at this one, the enable track vote. So enable track vote, if you have an event rotation and you have enable track vote, it'll show the track that you just did and the two next tracks in the rotation. And it will give users a chance to vote on those. And if you have this disabled and you have an event rotation, it'll just automatically go to the next track. If you don't have an event rotation, the admin or moderator or the host is going to have to change the tracks manually. All right, next up we have your track ID. So we're going to really quickly look at how you can bring this up. There's several ways you could bring this up. Really quickly, I'm going to show you where you can find all of these in the files. So I'm going to bring up my Wreckfest folder. And from there, we can go to Data. And then from here, Property. And then from here, Events. And then this is going to be all of our list of tracks. So you can see they don't have the same names as they do in the actual game. So we can just click this so we can see this is the actual track name here, fields 11_1. Or we have here, this is Death Loop. It's just loop, that's the name. So it's kind of hard to tell exactly what these are. I am going to have a link in the description down below about how to find out what tracks are which. And I should have even pictures for them so you can tell what actual, track name to use. And in addition to just looking at this, we also have another option for finding all of the track names. So I'm going to real quickly start up a server. All right, now that my server is started, you can see I have some commands in here. One of the commands is tracks. So if I just type this in, here is all of the list of available tracks. All right, so now that we've taken a look at this, I'm actually going to just minimize this and minimize this for right now and go back to this. So you can see here we have our track. We also have a game mode. We have number of teams, laps. You can see that there's like a lot of settings for setting up just your initial event. And let's say you don't have an event rotation. Whatever you set these to will be what the server's initial event is. But if you do have an event rotation, it'll just ignore these. For the game mode, there's several available options for game mode. We're going to bring back up that server real quick. Let me take a look at all the available game modes. So we can just type in game modes. And you can see here, here's all of the available game modes. So we have racing, and that's just a banger race. We have derby, that's actually last man standing. Then we have derby deathmatch, and that's just a deathmatch. Team derby is team deathmatch. Team race is team race, and elimination race is elimination race. All right, let's go ahead and minimize this again. So for bots, gives you the option from 0 to 24. You could set this to whatever you want. I don't think it actually goes up to 24. I think it always leaves 4 spots open for human players. AI difficulty. So the options here are novice, amateur, and expert. So for novice, that's going to be the easiest. Amateur gets a little harder, and expert even harder. Number of teams, you have 2 to 4. Laps, 1 to 60. So it says here you have an option from 1 to 60. You actually don't have a full option from 1 to 60. It's from 1 to 10. And then after 10, it's every 5 laps. So you have like 10, 15, 20. So those are your available options for that. All right, so for deathmatch, we can see we have our time limit here in minutes. I think 20 is way too long. Usually anything over 6 kind of gets too long, so I'll just set this at 6. Elimination interval. So this is when you're racing and the person in last gets eliminated. So you have, 0, 20, 30, and this is in seconds. So like after 20 seconds, somebody will be eliminated. And if you set this to just 0, that means somebody will be eliminated each lap. I would say if you have a server full of a lot of people, I would leave this number pretty low, like at 20, and maybe not even run elimination races because they can go on for a really long time if you have a full server. Vehicle damage options, you have normal, intense, or realistic. Intense is between normal and realistic. Normal being, your car's pretty tough. I almost never see a wheel come off in normal mode, but intense and realistic, yeah, wheels can come off. You can definitely see a lot more damage, especially in realistic. You die very easily. So for car restrictions, just have your options of A, B, C, or D. So just set your car class. For this, if you want to set a specific car that only everybody can use just one car, we'll go ahead and check out what that is. I'll bring up the Wreckfest server again. And then I'll just type in cars. And then here's all of the available cars. You can see the ones with like little L's beside of them. Those are like loaner cars. I would ignore those. So for special vehicles, you can choose to have them enabled or disabled. So if you want to have them disabled, you would set this to 1. And if you want a list of special vehicles, I should have a list right over here. There's not too many of them, but I like special vehicles. I'm going to leave this to 0. You can disable car resets if you want. I like car resets, so I leave this at 0, which leaves them enabled. Car reset delay, I personally like 5 seconds. You could set it at, 0 for no delay or 1 to 20 for, any number of those seconds for delaying. So you have your wrong way limiter disabled. What this does is whenever you're driving the wrong way, it will slow down your vehicle. So I like to leave this at 1. And what 1 does is it allows the car to go full speed when it's going backwards. So weather here, you can leave this blank. You can put in here random. That's always a viable option. And if you're not sure about the specific track that you've chosen here, so let's say we have field 13, you can actually go into the server and find out what all available options are there. So you can just type in here weathers. And here's all of your options just for this track. And each track has different options for the weather. And I should have all of the weather options in the link below to all of the tracks. So next we have frequency, and we have the option of high or low. If you leave this on high, it will have the server constantly updating all the players. And if you leave this on low, it won't update the players as much. So you'll put a bit more of like a load on the player's CPU, and also they won't be getting data as frequently, so there might be a bit more jitteriness and a lot less of a smooth experience online. So next up we have mods. So I'm not going to go over this one too much, but you just uncomment it, and then you would put whatever the mod number is right in here. But for right now, I'm not going to go over that. I should have a whole other video up in the next few days on how to actually do mods in Wreckfest and have a mod server. So the last option we have here is the log. And what the log does is, let's say, people are typing messages in the server, maybe there's some error in the server, something like that. It'll actually save all of that just to log.txt, and you can, go back over and look at, everything that's been going on in the server. All right, so real quickly, I'm going to cover the event loop. I'm not going to go into too much detail because I should have another video up on this soon. All right, so I'm just going to go ahead and uncomment this. I'm just getting rid of the pound sign at the very beginning. And this is going to be our loop here. So you can see there's a bunch of ones. You can actually add a whole ton. So you have this one, the add. This is where you're going to have your track ID or the track name. And you can have multiples of the same track. So let's say there's a popular track. You can put it in multiple times. You're going to have your game mode, the laps. You can put the number of bots you want. Have the car resets disabled the wrong way, disabled. You can have car restriction for the map. And also you can set the weather, or you could just leave it blank if you don't want to actually put anything in for any of these. All right, so that was pretty much everything for the server config file. Again, I should have a couple of videos up soon, one on how to set up a mod server, and another one on how to really quickly set up an event loop. All right, goodbye, everybody.